Welcome to Mental Attire, the Meaning Series. Today's episode is Walk It Like You Talk It. I am Amy.
I'm Cleopatra.
And I'm Caitlin.
So, our walk and our talk. You know, the saying goes talk the talk, walk the talk the walk, and walk the talk. And, you know, I've even said walk the walk. Just skip the talking, just our actions. You know, our actions, our mannerisms, all of that, our behaviors. Our behaviors include what we speak and what we do in our body and with our body and in our life. And so it's a matter of, do the words we speak and the actions we do, the talk and the walk, do they match? Are they in integrity with each other? Are they in integrity with God and what God says? You know,
Well, I think that when we were originally thinking of this topic, my thoughts on it are to bring awareness to how you're talking and then, of course, how you're walking that talk. But how you're talking, I feel like people talk so carelessly, and that could be physically like speaking to someone or even like messaging or, posting things. I guess that would technically count too. But I feel like people are so careless with how they talk and they don't take into consideration what those words are going to mean to the people around them and then even to themselves too, if they like stop and think about what is this going to bring into my life, but also like what are the consequences of these words. And like a story that comes to mind for me is, I think it was last year, we were over at the lake and these there was two different groups. There was a group of girls and a group of boys, and they were probably, oh, I don't know, middle school, early high school age. They weren't that old. And just the speech that they were using, the vulgarity actually of it, but just like how they were talking to each other, I'm like, that is not going to have good lasting effects in your life. It's not going to make a good impression on who you're talking to. And so I think that people just need to, as we often encourage, slow down and take inventory and become aware of how am I speaking? How am I speaking to myself? And then how am I speaking to my family members or my friends and just the people around me, even strangers? How am I speaking to them? And then or on the flip side, am I speaking one way and living my life another way? And so I think that's kind of what I had in mind when we were originally talking about this idea, is just kind of talking about how we've seen that in our own lives and then how we can encourage others to apply that to their lives too.
Well, and scripture says, like, whatever's in your heart your mouth is going to speak. And so, what we say, how we act and react, it mirrors what we're filling our hearts with. And so, our mental attire, it shows up in our speech and on our actions. And if we're clothed in peace and gratitude and all the good virtues, that's what's going to flow out. But if you're filling yourself with, I don't know if you want to put it as garbage or the junk, then that's also what's going to be coming out of your heart. So I think that comes with like like Cleopatra was saying, a self-reflection, a time of just reflecting on yourself and your actions and your words, but also what you're filling your heart up with. And then once you do that, then it will flow into your actions and your speech.
and with the mental, which is our mind, which is our beliefs, what we believe to be true. And, you know, we can have false beliefs that can get us on a path that is the low way instead of the highway of God's wisdom and truth. And so being able to look at, as you said, Caitlin, you know, what comes out of us is what's going through us, what we're also telling ourselves, our self-talk, the voices we have going on in our head, all of this, all of the self-talk, and then how we talk to others is going to have the consequences, is going to have either benefits and rewards, or they're going to be the low way, the school of hard knocks. And so it's going to go into our body, and Our body will not relay that very well. And then also our life. Our life will show and bring about how we're believing and then how we're talking and acting. And that is what, and we can change that. You can change that. Any of us can. We need to have a healthy support system. And God is always here, 24/7, behind the scenes, you know. But when we're the loudest, he's going to be very quiet. And when we are actually quiet, which we have under our mental attire videos, we have quiet time. You can learn about what we encourage to do: honest reflection, face the elephants, face the fears, face the changes we need to make. No, Cleopatra mentioned slowing down. We encourage people to live slow and slow down. Let's take an honest assessment, an honest reflection, do that quiet time, and, you know, great things come out of this.
I think also to kind of build off of that, and we also encourage this in our Unplugged series because we have it, the Unplug the Connection series. So we're encouraging you to connect with God, with yourself, and then also the people around you, which you can check that out. And we have our Unplug 31 challenge we would encourage you to check out. But I feel like when we have more meaningful speech and then also more meaningful action after that speech, you have deeper connections with the people around you. And even if you go back, Mom has gotten like some books from authors that were like a century to a century and a half ago, and just how they wrote and with like the intention that they wrote with is so different from a lot of like, this is obviously like a book example, but like they wrote with so much intention. I feel like they also spoke with so much more intention. Not everyone did, but it was like that was more of the standard. So like even in public, like that story I was explaining earlier, that wasn't looked at as okay. And so people had that standard to aspire to of how am I actually speaking to people. And so I just think of like those books as an example of there was so much more care that went into them. And even with like my own writing or in my own life, I'm like, am I actually putting care into this? Am I putting intention into this? Or is it just something to entertain, I guess? And there's nothing wrong with like being entertained in a healthy way, but it's also, is there meaning behind it? Or is it just kind of like filling spaces that we could be doing other more meaningful activities with? And so we do encourage you to connect in more meaningful ways with the people around you. And even I did my first digital Sabbath on this last Sunday, other than I had a little bit of time because my brother and I went somewhere and we had to call Mom and Dad, so I had to turn my phone on for about an hour and a half. But then I turned it back off. And it's funny because you don't even find yourself, or at least I didn't find myself like reaching for it. Maybe to look something up. Like I had the thought a couple of times because I'm curious and I want to know answers to questions. But I didn't find myself like missing it, if that makes sense. Like you're like, oh, this is fun. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do whatever. And so that's why obviously we would encourage you to check out the Unplugged series because that goes more in depth with those topics. But I feel like more meaningful speech and action all connects to more meaningful connections too.
Well, and the power of words, and we've talked about this before, words have power. And so they can either build up or they can tear down. And so I think the way we speak, our tone, our attitude, our choice of words, they reveal the condition of our heart, yes. But are your words matching the faith that you say you live by, or are they contradicting each other? And I think one of you brought that up, but like and actions, they speak louder than words, but your actions should also follow your words. And so it's not enough to just talk it and not follow through with that. People see they see God in you, God lived out, or your values lived out when our behaviors back our beliefs. And I'll never forget, I was watching a sermon online one time and the guy said your walk talks more than your talk talks. And that's something that has always stuck with me. Consistency between your word and your walk, it builds trust and it builds integrity with others.
And we have our consistency as key apparel that, as a reminder to be able to wear that for ourselves and others. And that's a really good point, though, the walk. The walk, our actions speak very loud. Our integrity. And are our actions aligned with God's wisdom, God's truths? I guess it really isn't about any other human being here on earth. It is. But ultimately, if we're aligning with God, then we're aligning with all the humans on the earth. So if we're doing God's way, the highway, the school of wisdom, then, in my opinion, we're doing right. And of course, we all can probably tweak that and manipulate that and twist those words. But, if we can go back to the scriptures, even before the Bible, and it's the consistency is there. And we can't change the wisdom and the truth. We can try, but it won't work because there's no human being that's been able to do it. So have at it, but it doesn't work that way.
I think when we were reading our Bibles this morning, we read Habakkuk. I think that's how you pronounce it. And it was talking about like how it was all destruction and violence and everything everywhere. And I feel like sometimes even in our world, modern world today, all these years later, like it's so easy to look around and only see that. But then I was reflecting and I'm like, sometimes you also have to be open to the connection that we're talking about and stuff in places you didn't necessarily expect or people you didn't expect. And I don't mean that in like a extreme way where you go out and like unsafe places or anything like that, but like you might not expect it to come this way, and then you're like, wow, look at how this has happened in my life, and you look back on it and you're like, I would have never expected that. And so I feel like in a wise way, obviously be open to those possibilities instead of being so focused on one particular way that it has to happen. And also then I was writing down like in my notes this morning of like, yes, there's a lot of destruction and violence and stuff around, and I don't think it's wise to turn a blind eye to it necessarily. But also when we start to focus on how we can make even just our circle a better place, and then that ripples into the rest of the world, I think it's also a good idea to focus on the good and to ask God, how can I be part of the good? And that's what's going to make the change, instead of focusing too much on these negative, horrible things. We have to be aware of them, but then also be asking how we can be, like Caitlin says, stewarding the good in the world around us too. Because I feel like it can get depressing and all of that if you're not trying to create good in the world too.
Well, and to go off of that, like if you're filling your mind, like you said, it's good to know things, but if you're filling your mind constantly with the negative things of this world, if you're filling yourself up with that, that goes back to your mental attire. It's not going to leave you in a good state. You're not going to feel well, and it's also not going to pour into your family well. If that's something you're just maybe so anxious about, or so it can depress you. If it's something that you're just so focused on, it's what's going to come out. And so we need to, I think, renew our minds with and we talk about this in the Unplugged Challenge, with beginning our day in God's Word and in prayer and connecting with each other at breakfast time, and making our walk and our talk align with God. And his word says in, I think it's Romans, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And so I think that starts with, instead of maybe flipping the news channel on or grabbing your social media and seeing, oh, what's going on, because that's filling your heart up with something. Be transformed by his word, be renewed by his word. The goal isn't to be perfect, because there's no perfect way to do it, but it's just to come as you are and let God transform your heart. It's about that transformation that he can do for you, letting him reshape you into how you think and how you speak and how you live. I think that's how all of that can align, like between your heart and your head and all of that, and your steps.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And, the slandering, gossiping, any of that with our words, it's, ego, pride, entitlement, All of it. With any of us human beings, we need to be aware of that. We need to pay attention. We need to be cautious and careful, and do honest reflection regularly. So then we're assessing, okay, where am I at? How am I acting? How am I behaving? How am I treating others? And when you get in check and you get into a rhythm of this regularly, you'll be more aware. And we have our ABC to become aware and recognize and admit. And then we have B, okay, what beliefs and behaviors do we need to change? And then C is change those. Repent, turn to God, change our ways, think in new ways, think in the highway, the wisdom versus the low way, the school of hard knocks. So a takeaway, ladies.
I think I'll go ahead and go first. I'll give you time to think,
No, you
Cleopatra.
can go.
But I would just encourage you, like, in where you're at, whether that's in your home, whether I don't know your stage of life, but I talk about it all the time, how you're stewarding your time and what you're letting filter what you're letting. Don't just let everything go through your mind. Don't let everything just come through. Filter that. Have those good, healthy, godly boundaries, and your actions. How can you start having them match what you believe? Maybe take a moment and take inventory. How do my actions at home match what I post or what I say online? Or, are my actions out, with people or at work? Are they matching who I say that I truly am? Am I participating in gossip and in slander? Am I participating in ungodly, unrighteous things? I would just take that moment to self-check and to take that inventory, because it really does start just in your home, and it starts with you, and it starts with you making those changes and those small steps.
Yeah, I think that my takeaway would be, and we encourage this just with everyday living, is to be more intentional. Slow down and be more intentional with how you're living. So I would encourage you to be more intentional with how you're speaking, first of all with God, then with yourself, and then those around you, and then also with your actions. Commit to being intentional with your actions. And even if it makes you move slower or you're not feeling like you're at the same pace as everyone, it's okay. I feel like if there's more intention, people are also going to notice that. And it might make them take inventory of their speech and their actions without you even having to say that like specifically to them. They might just notice like this person is taking the time to talk slower or to talk with more meaning, and their actions are matching up. Maybe I should do the same thing. So I guess my takeaway or my action step for you would be to be more intentional with your speech and with your actions.
And I have two. The first one is observe, do not absorb. So we're all energy. We're all soaking up everything, whether that's through technology, in person, whatever. We read, listen to everything, and that turns into our words and our actions. So work on observing. Like they've said, step back and observe. Do not absorb it, because we do. We are 95% subconscious, unconscious. We are picking everything up that we're programmed and conditioned. And so that 5% become conscious. Slow down, get quiet. And the second thing, now I don't know if I can even remember. Well, I don't think I do. But realize that when you do this, the payoffs will happen. I think, this is what it was, is work on being consistent with whomever you talk to, and work on just, if you're going to say something that's not going to be wise, just work on not saying anything to start with. It takes a lot of self-discipline, but you can do it. Think before we speak, and before you put anything out there in the world, because once it's out there in the world, it's there. That's how it is in this day and age, and it's always been that way. And so am I talking to a 1-year-old, a 10-year-old, a 15, 25, 60-year-old? Would I talk to my parents, a teacher? other people, anybody in our lives. Let's keep it more consistent. I realize we may have to say things with different words, but keep the wisdom there and our words, or just don't say anything at all.
Well, I think that it just is a matter of like your character, and you hear about character a lot, and if you're consistent across anyone that you're interacting with, like Mom said, maybe if you're talking to a child, you might have to say it a little bit differently so they can understand. But if you're consistent in how you're speaking and what you're saying, then I think that that is a testament to your character too. So I just wanted to add that.
And I would put one other, along with what's been said today, is Cleopatra had brought up the social norms and the culture accepted. I would challenge all of you. We challenge all of you to get out of the mentality of, oh, they're just kids. Oh, they're just young adults. Oh, they're just teens. Oh, they're just being that. You know what? It does not serve anyone well. It's not helping anyone. Oh, they're just having fun. You only live once. Well, that is true. But just to understand, we all need to, that there's consequences with that. So I would challenge people, let's get out of that mentality of that, and let's step into everybody will feel so much better and be healthier and feel happier. So thank you. We appreciate you. We are grateful for you. No one nor family shall do life alone. So reach out and connect with us, and take care.